Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. This is Karim Samra. I am co-founder of Change Labs, and I'm here today to talk about how to launch your startup, register your startup in Cyprus. I'm really excited to be here, and I want to thank AUC, and I want to thank HALT, and I want to thank Startups Without Borders, their team, and GIZ, and of course, all of the sponsors that have made this amazing event possible. And I'm honored to be here with you all today. And I think it's a very important topic that we're going to be speaking about today, which is doing business in Cyprus. Because as a startup, as a company, even if you're not a startup that was just founded, but maybe you're a company that's 1, 2, 3, or 4 years old, you have important decisions to make on where to locate. And where you're located can really impact the nature of how you can do business, how fast you can expand, what markets you can expand into, and fundamentally, your quality of life as an entrepreneur, right, is affected by where you do business and how you operate. You might spend 2 to 3 hours a week in your bank, or you might spend 5 minutes doing transactions online or 10 minutes online instead. And these little things can make a big difference in the life of an entrepreneur. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start by taking you through my journey and sort of why I'm here speaking to you about registering your company in Cyprus. What makes me able to do that? Why am I giving you that advice? In other words, because it's one thing to be hired by a country or a government or an entity to market their doing business there. I'm not, though. I'm not paid by any government. I'm not hired by any government. I don't represent Cyprus in any official capacity. Rather, based on my experience as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a businessman for the last 20 plus years, I've created or we at Change Labs have created this registration package for you based on our experience alone and based on our experience registering companies in 3 or 4 or 5 other markets. And I'll talk about that shortly. So I'll talk a little bit about my background. Then I'll move into the section that I call Startup Cyprus, which will cover a little bit of the details of the package, how it works. I'll go over some frequently asked questions, etc. And then we'll move into effectively an offline Q&A. I'll share my contact information with you. We do have a booth set up. So Change Labs is one of the companies that has a live booth set up today all day at the Startups Without Borders conference. You can visit that booth. You can meet the team. We're all kind of going to be in there for an hour or so. We're switching. We're taking turns. So you'll have a chance to meet the whole team. You can ask your questions there should you have any additional questions. So let me start by going over very quickly sort of my career and what got me here. Okay, I want you to know firstly that I studied history in undergrad. History. Okay, I didn't study finance. I didn't study business. I wasn't interested in entrepreneurship. I was just interested in understanding where we came from, and the recent history of the Middle East, etc. Right after college, I joined, EMC Squared, which is a technology company out of Boston. EMC Squared, they still exist. It's a huge data storage company. I think I lasted about 6 months at EMC Squared. I could not handle being in a tiny cubicle all day, processing paperwork or making sales calls and doing all the other stuff they wanted me to do. I know it's the beginning of my career and one should be patient. I'm not saying this is, the right thing to do, but I'm explaining to you guys that it was very difficult for me to sit in that cubicle. I found myself in a massive room the size of a soccer field, literally. And it was all cubicles from one end to the other. And I was one of those cubicles. And although the company was a great company and presumably I was starting my career, I just found that very difficult. So I went and did other things for a few years. I did some banking. I did some investment banking out of Geneva. Then I decided a few years later, and I also launched the first accelerator in the MENA region back in 2005 in Dubai, when accelerators were not cool. Nobody was doing it. Most people didn't know what it was. And then, the financial crisis hit. I went back to school. And again, this is when I registered my first company in Dubai. I had already registered a company in the US before. Now I've registered my first company in Dubai. I got familiar with the registration process there. I had an office at the World Trade Center back then in 2005, which is on Sheikh Zayed in Dubai. So I got familiar with that whole process. I then decided to go back to school, went back to New York, spent a couple of years doing my MBA at Stern, learned more about business, and then, took a shot at Cairo, Egypt for the first time. I'm originally Egyptian, but, I never lived in Egypt. So this was my first time moving to Egypt. I joined a very well-known consulting firm called Booz and Company. I worked with the Minister of Finance in Egypt. I got to know what it's like to live in Egypt. Then went back to New York again, and spent a few years with General Electric and Barclays Capital in Manhattan on Wall Street, and did some of that real corporate, experience. And then decided to once again, and this time for the final time, what I call quit the cubicle and I joined the Whole Prize Foundation. I was very blessed and lucky to be invited by the founder of the Whole Prize Foundation and CEO at the time, Ahmed Ashar, and he asked me to join his team and help kind of grow the platform and help him run it as his number two. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn about startups and entrepreneurship and all of that. And that was for me, again, the last time I quit the cubicle. The Whole Prize is a very different kind of organization. It does not operate like a big company. So it was a first for me. And it was that's when I really chose impact, and I chose entrepreneurship, and I chose startups. I mean, entrepreneurship and startups. And then a few years after that, I went ahead and founded Change Labs, where I am the CEO and founder today. And that's kind of my quick, okay, but again, Change Labs was registered originally in Lebanon. I then registered Change Labs in Egypt. And then finally now I registered it in Cyprus. So along the way, along the path, and Change Labs is not the only company that I've registered. So along the path that I just described to you all, I've registered 5, 6, 7, 8 companies in many different jurisdictions, right? From the US to Dubai to Egypt. And so I'm quite become familiar, not on purpose. I've accidentally become familiar with the legal environment in the Middle East that we all have to deal with as entrepreneurs. And it's from that perspective that I'm speaking to you today about Cyprus. Again, some of my experience growing up sort of in this world is that, expertise and experience are extremely valuable, right? It's not about, being flashy and being, everywhere at the same time or talking. It's about doing, and it's about gaining that experience. And gaining experience in this sector, startups, entrepreneurship, takes time. It's just like any other sector. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of experience. And I was fortunate enough to spend 6 years with the Whole Prize Foundation, where I just worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of startups over the years. And I had some great mentors and coaches around me, including Ahmed and others, who kind of guided me as I went from the corporate world into this world of entrepreneurship and startups. And so it took me a while, and I made a lot of mistakes, but eventually I just through numbers. It's just through numbers. I worked with so many startups. You see some of the startups that I was able to work with on this slide, but I ended up working with a lot of startups. And then I ended up getting a lot of media exposure, but it took a long time. Again, after 5 or 6 years or 4 years of working, I started getting more media exposure. We started launching more exciting products and services, both at the Whole Prize and then thereafter when I joined Change Labs. So it was all kind of a journey. And that journey, taught me a lot about business, about entrepreneurship, about legal affairs. I'm really happy to announce and to kind of share with you guys that Change Labs is now in 2019 a top 10 MENA accelerator. I mean, we founded Change Labs in 2018, and late 2017, maybe early 2018. So we didn't, we quickly rose to prominence, and I'm very proud of that. And of course, the team that helped me build that, who are all from Egypt and Lebanon and Jordan, and they're all locals, and it's an amazing, really, achievement. And I think part of what made us so successful so quickly is that we focused on business, but also impact. It was never just purely about business and profits for us. It was always about impact-centered business that improves the world at the same time. It's about the concept of doing business while doing good, and positioning ourselves that way from day one. And having, of course, the track record of having worked for 6 years with the Whole Prize. All of these things really helped us kind of reach success quickly. We've been blessed enough to make investments in a number of startups over the last few years since inception, and this is just a selection of them. And of course, we're now trusted by entrepreneurs in Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon and all over the region, by supporting organizations, by governments, by development banks. A lot of the big development banks, or at least a few of them, joined us for the first time in the Middle East through a Change Labs program. So when you think about the Dutch Development Bank, which is a major organization out of the Netherlands. They came, some of their senior team came to Lebanon for the first time because of one of our programs. Likewise, they did the same thing in Egypt. And so it's very, for us, right, as connectors, right? I see myself and my team as connectors. We want to connect between East and West. We want to make sure that Middle Eastern entrepreneurs have the same opportunities that entrepreneurs have in San Francisco or London or anywhere else. And so we're very proud when we manage to bring investors and leaders from around the world to the region for the first time. And again, we've done accelerators, we've done festivals since our launch, we've done competitions and prizes, and we really have inspired dozens, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs in the region, and we're very proud of that. So that's kind of a very, very quick, I don't want to take too much of your time or spend too much of your time on my background, but I do think it's important to understand my background before we start talking about, where you should register your company. Because if I've never started a company before, or if I haven't registered 5, 6, 7, 8 companies, then really who am I to tell you where to register yours? I mean, there has to be some connection there. And I'm hoping, and I know that you're going to hear from other awesome people at this event about other locations where you can register your startup. And that's really cool. And as entrepreneurs and as companies, part of being a successful CEO or a successful leader is being able to make those right decisions and evaluate your options. So do attend the other sessions, do evaluate your options, do your research on what the best thing is for you. Because at the end of the day, I can talk to you about the advantages of Cyprus, and I can tell you that Cyprus worked for me and my companies, but is it going to work for you? Does it have the same benefits for you? I don't know. You have to say that. You have to evaluate that. So moving on to kind of our startup package. I mean, as I said, after the last kind of 10 to 15 years of me launching companies, registering them, closing them down, moving locations, because you saw from my initial background that I moved a lot. I went to business school, then I came back. I launched an incubator in Dubai. Then then I went to business school. Then I came back to the region. I went to Egypt, tried to do some stuff in Egypt. Then I went back to the US for a while, spent some time on Wall Street, came back to the region, and that time in Beirut. So, that moving across borders that I did has forced me to become a bit of an expert at, legal registration. So, I tried to register in Jordan. I registered in Lebanon. I registered in Egypt. I registered in Dubai. And most recently, I registered in Cyprus. And once I did that, I found so many of my problems and my challenges being resolved as an entrepreneur and founder, though, who works on a cross-border basis as well. So it's not just about, I don't work locally in one country, as you guys all know. I work across the countries of the Middle East. Change Labs operates across the Middle East. We have programs in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, hopefully Tunisia soon, Palestine soon. And so what that means is, for a company that needs to be regional and needs to have potential clients and customers in Europe, potential clients and customers in the US, programs across the region, I really found Cyprus to be absolutely the best place, not just to register your company, but also to live. From a quality of life, from a political stability perspective, it's really amazing. So what we did is, once I did that, and once my teams, saw, and we talked a little bit about kind of the benefits of being here in Cyprus, we put together a Cyprus registration package so that all of you and all startups and all companies in the MENA region can be informed, can learn, and can take advantage of the same opportunity that we did. But again, it took me 15 years, and it took me registering 6 or 7 companies until I finally got here. Imagine the cost, the wasted money, imagine all the costs associated to that. Had I known, had somebody just told me about this option from the beginning, I would have saved so much time and money. And so this is why we at Change Labs, we see ourselves as service providers, as people helping entrepreneurs and startups. So we thought, well, look, it's a no-brainer. We have to tell people about this. And we have to not only tell people, because telling people is one thing, but then gaining access to the opportunity can be challenging. You don't know where to find the right attorney, the right partner. You're afraid maybe someone tricks you. And so we not only decided to tell you about the opportunity, we also decided to actually create the opportunity for you and package it so that it's easy and so that you can access it at the right price and with the right partner. And so it's the first, you'll notice this is the first startup Cyprus registration package ever. And it's one of a kind. And we have the best local partner with us, Katsis Law. These guys are not just attorneys, they're attorneys and businessmen. So they understand business very, very well, and they understand the requirements of a company and a startup. We launched a marketing campaign. I've displayed a few of those flyers here on the slide today for you to look at. And we're going to look into more detail now on the next slide, which is kind of what does it mean to relocate to Cyprus? Why would you relocate to Cyprus? And kind of what are some of the benefits of relocating to Cyprus, so you can evaluate for yourself if this is the right thing for your company. So what does it mean, first of all? What does our Change Labs startup package include? Number one, of course, your company registration, right? Your articles of incorporation, your shareholder agreements, everything required, your registration numbers, so your company registration documents. Number two, and what's interesting here, and I haven't seen before, guys, having registered in other countries, I haven't seen this before, but what's cool is that they also will help you open your personal and your corporate bank accounts. So our partners there, Katsis Law, is an official recommender, which means that once they evaluate you, they ask you questions. Of course, they look at your background, your documents, your passport, etc. Once they kind of review you, they then go to the bank and they sort of help you open your personal and corporate bank accounts. They have a financial department which takes care of that. So they're not just your lawyers who write up your company documents. They're also going to help you open your personal and corporate bank accounts. They're going to help you apply and secure a residency in Cyprus, which is a European Union country that allows you to enter and exit as you please. Okay. And you'll get access to a startup package of tools and resources that we only usually give to our entrepreneurs that are in our accelerators. Okay? So these are people, the companies that are accepted and admitted into our very exclusive accelerators. I mean, we don't take more than 15 startups per cohort. And we have cohorts in Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and we're launching a couple more cohorts actually next year that you may be interested in, that you should look up. Again, all of that information is in our booth. The booth is accessible here at Startups Without Borders, but these tools and resources, we usually only give access to startups. But again, if you elect to use this package, if it's useful for you, we will give you access to the tools and resource library, which will help you build your business in general as well. And you'll get registered offices and administration services for 1 year. That usually costs between 500 to 800 euros a year. And this is included for 1 year. You'll have to pay that going forward for subsequent years. So this whole package that I just described, for 5,000 euros, you can be done with it and you can get it. And again, cost-wise, guys, it's probably a little bit more expensive than Jordan or Lebanon, for example, although in the medium to long term, Jordan and Lebanon catch up on the costs. It's probably significantly less expensive than going to somewhere like Dubai. So, I mean, I'm just giving you the relative, right? I mean, you can go attend the other sessions. I know there's Eastern European nations that are attending this year as well. So you can listen to the different people and compare the pricing. But this is the standard pricing here. The interesting thing about this package, in addition to all of this, is it's not just the pricing and the basic stuff that I described. It's really the benefits of living and staying and being able to access Cyprus. Okay, you have super high speed internet, no internet issues whatsoever. The highest speed internet you want, you can get. You have daily flights to almost every Middle Eastern city. You have two international airports in Cyprus. Cyprus is a tiny island, right, with beautiful beaches, mind you, and amazing weather. And it's a European city. It looks and feels like a European city, but there's two international airports. And so you can pretty much get to anywhere you want. You can get to Europe extremely easily and extremely cheaply. The interesting thing is that, for instance, for those of you who travel, you know that London has many airports. There's Heathrow, there's Gatwick, and there's others. So flying into some of the more major airports like Heathrow is usually more expensive. But if you get flights that fly into secondary airports, you get cheaper tickets. And from Cyprus, you can fly into these secondary airports and thus save money. And so it's not just about the startup registration fees being lower or the great benefits that you get. It's also generally over time less expensive because the cost of living and the cost of traveling to and from Cyprus is lower than, for example, traveling to Western Europe or Eastern Europe, which is farther, or Dubai even. And that's the funny thing. We all think when we're in the Middle East, right? We think Dubai right away. But the reality is, Cyprus is much closer, much cheaper, much nicer. Okay, I've lived in Dubai for many years, and it's just an all around better place to do business. And so these are all things that you guys should consider and think about carefully as you make your evaluation. And let me spend, the last few minutes. Again, I want to be sensitive about everybody's time. Let me spend the last few minutes that we have together going over some FAQs. Okay, some frequently asked questions about Cyprus. Number one, do I need to be located in Cyprus to actually take advantage of this package? And the answer there is no. You do not need to be located in Cyprus. So if you don't want to come to Cyprus, you don't have to. Okay? You can talk to Demos and Katsis Law, our partners, on the phone. You can go over all your documentation. You can open your bank accounts virtually, and then you can simply use online banking going forward. And mind you, you can have Euro accounts, you can have USD accounts. Okay. And of course, look, there's always going to be a what's called a KYC process. Know your customer. That's always going to be there. Okay. I'm not suggesting that you're going to circumvent any of the traditional, normal, healthy, evaluation processes that are required. But, again, startups, most of us as startups, as entrepreneurs, don't have any issues there. And it's very easy for us to go through these processes. And so you don't need to be physically located in Cyprus. You don't even need to come to Cyprus, okay, if you don't want to. Now, I recommend you do, but you don't have to, okay? How much are travel tickets to and from Cyprus? Usually to get from Cyprus to Egypt, to get from Cyprus to Lebanon, it's a couple $100 for a ticket. So $200. It's usually not more than that. Okay, now granted, there's obviously lockdowns right now, and so traveling is more restricted. For example, normally there were 2 or 3 daily flights to Egypt. Right now, the flights are once a week. There's still a couple $100 though. Okay, are there any other fees not included in this package that you have to worry about? Not unless you want extra services. So everything you need to register your company, get your papers, get your bank accounts, start transacting and doing business is included in the package. Things like accounting, things like if you want extra services, they can be provided, but they're not included in this package. Okay. How strong? I mean, I mentioned this before, but in terms of internet connections, they're really strong in Cyprus and they're not interrupted. Likewise, we have no electricity interruptions. Okay, so I know Lebanon has some of those. I know Egypt had and still has some of those. Many of the countries in the Middle East still suffer from that. That's not an issue here. Okay, no electricity interruptions. You have an infrastructure that's very, very healthy and very strong. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, but what about the legal system? How do I understand whether anybody can take advantage of me or trick me in Cyprus? It sounds scary. I read an article on Al Jazeera recently. Sounds a bit scary. Don't worry. It's based on the British common law system. So Cyprus used to be a protectorate or a colony of the British, and so it's based on the British legal system. There's many, many tourists that come in every year from the UK. There's many tourists that come in from Russia. There's many tourists from all over Europe and Asia that come to Cyprus. And the legal system is a reliable UK-based common law system. And there have been many, many instances of people sort of taking advantage of the legal system and kind of getting fair treatment. So it's a place where you can expect to be treated fairly always. How expensive is the cost of living, or how expensive is it to live in Cyprus? It's actually pretty cheap. It's in euro. The currency of Cyprus is the euro. Nevertheless, because it's much of Cyprus is rural. I mean, if some of you have been to Beirut before, the geography of Cyprus looks a lot like Lebanon. Okay, but of course the cities are very quiet, the roads are very clean, and once you get out of the cities, I mean, it's just mountains and greenery. So and it's very easy to live close to a city, but in the middle of greenery and mountains, for example. So it's actually a cheap place to live and operate. And I was mentioning before about plane tickets, and that's one of the disadvantages in a lot of the other countries where it may be cheap to set up a company, like the US, right? You can go set up your company in the US, but you're never going to be able to go to the US, right? You're never going to, I mean, you'll be able to go, but it'll cost you $800 per ticket, $1,000 a ticket. It's not very accessible. It's far away. I mean, whether we like it or not, the United States is far away. Yes, you can register your company in Delaware, but it's far away, and the legal system in Cyprus is just as strong. It's much closer, and the cost of living is much lower. Okay, how accessible is Cyprus? What's the quality of life like? It's a European country. The cities are Limassol and Larnaca. and Paphos. Okay, these are the main cities, and Nicosia, which is the capital city. Nicosia is inland. All of the other cities are pretty much on the Mediterranean coast. So they are seafront cities. And so you're always close to the sea. The weather is beautiful. And there's a lot of quality of life issues that I think are useful in Cyprus and that we kind of overlook as entrepreneurs as well. And again, you don't have to have your base in Cyprus, but at least you know that when you're going to do, administrative issues, when you're going to travel to take care and check on your bank accounts and meet your accountants or meet your attorney, you're going to a place that's safe, that's secure, that's easy in, easy out, and cheap, right? So in addition to all of the other benefits, and should you seek, or should you want to get more, process more immigration papers and apply for a passport eventually and do things like that, of course it's possible after you demonstrate for a few years that your business is operating successfully, that you're participating in the community, you can apply for citizenship over the longer term. So that's for me kind of it. I don't want to take any more of your time. I think I'm on time, I hope. Um, if you want more information, I encourage you to email us, okay, info@changelabsme.org. I also encourage you all to follow us on Instagram. And of course, you can visit our booth here at Startups Without Borders. And I'll be in there for a while. My co-founder, Shamal, may be there. Tawfiq might be there, our colleague, and a bunch of other team members from Change Labs. You can meet us. And thanks again for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope this was useful to you. It was a quick overview based on my experience. And I really think this is a valuable opportunity for everybody who's thinking about where to do business and how to do business. Happy to answer questions. I'm going to tell the Startups Without Borders team to share my email with you if you need it. If you need to reach out to me directly, you can. Thank you very much, everybody. And I hope to meet you all in person very soon. Stay safe. Bye.